Okay, hello again. Right, now, hot on the heels of our Keeper of Traken review, here we are with Logopolis, written by Christopher H. Bidmead and directed by Peter Grimwade. Transmitted across February and March 1981, Logopolis is the very last adventure of Tom Baker's uber-iconic Fourth Doctor. The end of season 18, what, if you remember, I call the mopey Doctor season, although this time around the Doctor has plenty of reason to be mopey. And it's the end of an era. After 7 years in the role, fixing himself firmly and forever in the minds of the viewing and non-viewing public as the Doctor, the definite article you might say, Baker bows out in a suitably portentous, doom-laden story that sees the Doctor give his life in order to save the universe from total collapse. Well, we've all been there. In a nutshell, the Doctor's looking to fix the TARDIS chameleon circuit in order for the TARDIS to do what it's supposed to do and assume any shape, that way it can better blend in with its surroundings, instead of sticking out like a sore thumb as a massive incongruous blue box. He explains all this to Matthew Waterhouse's Adric as he, mopes through the TARDIS, thinking about decay and entropy. Must be a Tuesday. But who cares about that anyway? Because he's doing it in a new part of the TARDIS that we've never seen before. The Cloister Room. Woo! I love the Cloister Room. What a great place. A leafy courtyard covered in ivy with stone benches and columns and statues and all that. In the TARDIS. A place where the Doctor can ponder in peace. It's a proper glimpse at last of just how much there is to the Doctor's space and time machine. I think it looks wonderful. Anyway, back to the central core. To fix the circuit, he's going to need to travel to the planet Logopolis, the most boring planet in the entire universe, despite what we learn about its crucial function. Seemingly populated entirely by old men who do nothing but literally mutter mathematical computations. No thanks. Anyway, for some reason, before he goes to Snoresville Squared in the Snooze-On Nebula, he needs to measure all the dimensions of an actual police box. Unfortunately, in an incredible stroke of bad luck, or just plain shonky writing, the Master, now wearing the body he stole from Nissa's father in the last adventure, has materialised around the very same police box that the Fourth Doctor intends to measure. I mean, what are the chances? Honestly though, how did the Master know? Not just that the Doctor wanted to fix the chameleon circuit, but also which police box he was going to measure and in what time period. Later on the Doctor says something about the two of them in many ways having the same mind, but that just doesn't cut it, and it's very obviously not meant that way. Whatever. It is what it is. And it does mean that when the Doctor moves his TARDIS around this police box, he's unwittingly materialising around another TARDIS, which causes a very cool loop sequence of the Doctor and Adric leaving the console room through the door of the police box inside the TARDIS, only to find themselves in the same console room again, facing another police box. Meanwhile, as they try to break out of the loop, soon-to-be companion Tegan Jovanka, played by the incomparable Janet Fielding, is outside with her extremely cool Auntie Vanessa, shout out to Auntie Vanessa, played with supremely unfazed Australian Spank by Delore Whiteman, trying to fix a broken tyre in order to get to her first day on the job as an air stewardess. Thinking that she can call for help from the police box nearby, yes, that police box, she ends up stumbling inside and having her mind blown wide open. Unfortunately, outside, Auntie Vanessa has become the second victim of the Master's Tissue Compression Eliminator, or TCE. The first being a policeman, although we don't really know this until the Doctor finally emerges from the TARDIS into daylight, where a police inspector brings him to Auntie Vanessa's abandoned car and shows the Doctor what's in the driving seat. Two human beings, shrunk to the size of dolls. Actually, there are loads of them in this adventure. This new Master, he just can't get enough of zapping people with his TCE, or rather, zapping people with his TCE. It's clearly his kink. Also outside, the Doctor sees our first glimpse of a strange, ghostly figure watching them from across the road. The Watcher. Before the Doctor is carted off to the cop shop, Adric causes a distraction and the pair of them run to the TARDIS and dematerialise, leaving behind a normal police box, completely empty now, and some very confused officers of the law. With the Master apparently loose somewhere in the TARDIS, the Doctor decides to literally flush him out by landing underwater and opening the TARDIS doors. It's a bit of a careless idea really, since potentially the entire water supply of the planet could disappear into the TARDIS and never come out again, dooming humanity to die of thirst. Oops. Still, luckily for us, the Doctor misses and lands on a jetty, from where he sees the Watcher on London Bridge calling him over to tell him he must go to Logopolis. As they arrive, Tegan runs into the console room after having lost herself in the corridors and naturally freaking out about it. And so it is that at last the three of them step foot onto the pinkish dusty ground of Logopolis. And Nissa's there, apparently brought by a friend of the Doctor, clearly a big fan of Sarah Sutton. The tedious Logopolitans set about muttering the equations that will fix the Doctor's chameleon circuit. But unfortunately, the Master is now prowling the streets, shrinking more people and messing with their computations. And finally, here we get to see Anthony Ainley being the Master. And he's fantastic. I think his shtick gets a little bit tired after a while, a little bit one note, but here it just hits right. Ainley is great in Logopolis, and there's something about the way that his Master and the Fourth Doctor respond to one another which really makes me wish that we'd seen them face off more. By messing with the calculations, the Master's interference causes the TARDIS to shrink, with the Doctor inside, and we get some really fun, trippy little scenes in the TARDIS console room while this is happening. To fix the problem, the leader of Logopolis, Monitor, played with top-tier lovey plumminess by John Fraser, takes Adric on a really dull walk through the place trying to find the error, which they do in the form of 3 shrunken Logopolitans. The calling card of the Master, that's what Adric tells Monitor, which I'm going to assume the Doctor mentioned to him on the way to the planet, since he'd have absolutely no way of knowing this otherwise. Anyway, it's enough to find the solution to the Doctor's problem, and he and the TARDIS are restored to the way they were before. The Doctor explains that the Master is about, and has killed people on Logopolis, and on Earth. Meanwhile, Nyssa has encountered the Master, who she thinks is her father, because, well, that's her old man's body she's talking to. He takes advantage of this to give her a bracelet that he can use to control her mind. The villain. The awful, repetitive villain. He was up to this kind of jewellery-based skullduggery only 3 weeks ago. The Doctor soon puts her right when they all find themselves in the same place, and the Master is gloating because he set up this device that he says temporarily silences the spoken maths of the Logopolitans. Monitor is aghast at this. Silencing Logopolis, he warns, will cause universal disaster. The Master scoffs at this, and to prove his point about the effect being temporary, he turns off the device, like that, only for them all to discover that the silence persists. When me and my sister used to watch this, we loved to pretend that in this moment the Doctor stared at the Master and said, "You clot." Well, it wasn't actually the word clot, but it did contain the same amount of letters and start and finish the same way. Anyway, we then invented our The Master You Clot award that we'd hand out to family members whenever they'd been a complete clot. Back to the story. I always love those moments when the Master thinks that he's in total control, only to realise that he's made a terrible mistake and he's just as much in the crap as everyone else around him. And this one is a doozy. Turns out that the universe long ago passed the point of heat death, and that the Logopolitans' spoken maths had been modelling CVEs, that's charged vacuum emboitments. No, me neither. Through which that they'd been channeling excess entropy to other universes, presumably causing billions of deaths in those universes. But since the Doctor doesn't say anything about it, I guess that's okay. Anyway, thanks to the Master, the CVEs are closed and the universe is dying fast. Entropy and decay, again. Hey, I guess all that moping around at the beginning was foreshadowing. Fantastic stuff. Well, even if this whole mess was caused by the Master, if the Doctor wants to save the universe, well, he's going to have to work with him. There's a great shot showing the TARDIS at an angle from above, which then tilts and pans down as the Doctor ushers Nyssa, Tegan and Adric inside so that he can get on with the business of working with the Master. It's a really dynamic shot from Grimwade, who's done some great work across this story in terms of atmospherics. With Logopolis crumbling around them, the Doctor, the Master and Tegan, who of course refuse to stay put, make their way to the control room where Monitor shows them a computer program his people put together to make the CVEs permanent. And with the planet and Monitor disintegrating, the Doctor and company take the program back to the real Pharos project on Earth using the Master's TARDIS. The Watcher meanwhile has taken the Doctor's TARDIS right out of time and space. Why? I have no idea, since it has no effect whatsoever on the story other than being a cool moment. And you know what? Maybe that's enough of a reason. Maybe we don't always need narrative logic. Alright. Anyway, it gives Nyssa and Adric a great view of the destruction of everything. Oh wait, maybe that's it. Outside of time and space, they'd be the only ones left. Maybe the Doctor figured they could breed, and Tegan would have provided some crucial genetic variation. Oh well, banjos in space it is. Thanks, Tegan. Anyway, back on Earth, the Doctor is using a giant satellite dish to transmit the Logopolis universe-saving program to the CVEs, while the Master, of course, is taking advantage to blackmail the peoples of the universe to do what he says, or he'll close the CVEs again, presumably killing himself in the process. Unless he's planning a three-way outside of time and space with... No, that wouldn't be right. Or legal. The Master's a megalomaniac, not a nonce. Obviously the Doctor's not having that, so the transmission having done its job, he pulls the plug to stop the Master from reversing it. I guess for his part, the Master is happy enough to take the consolation prize of turning the dish, so that the Doctor falls to his bone-shattering death from one of the dodgiest model setups ever. And then, I don't care what anybody says, we get the best regeneration of classic Doctor Who. Of all Doctor Who, actually, at least to my mind. To the sound score of a weird, funky, waka-waka, sci-fi warbling fusion, the companions run to the prone body of the Fourth Doctor, lying on his back, face peering up at the sky, awaiting the moment that has been prepared for. Behind him appears the Watcher, who floats down and fuses with the Doctor. It turns out that this apparition was a strange echo of the future Doctor himself, beginning the most alien transformation the Doctor has ever been through. The soft focus of the camera gives a further otherworldly feel as the Fourth Doctor's face slowly becomes that of the Watcher, resembling a kind of humanoid chrysalis, which then transforms into a more recognisably human face, but still weird and chalky white as if it's made of dust, before finally settling onto the smooth, young complexion of the Fifth Doctor, who props himself up on his elbows and regards those around him with a sort of affable bemusement. Everything has changed. Now, I'm not going to claim that Logopolis is the most thrilling climax for a Doctor's tenure. All the maths and CVE stuff can be more than a bit tedious, and not all of it makes sense narratively either, but still, there's just something about it. Perhaps it's the knowledge that we're watching something momentous come to an end, and that the whole thing is treated not as something celebratory, but something somber, something heavy and foreboding. This is a story about death, and the Doctor knows it. This is something you really pick up on rewatches. When the Doctor first sees the Watcher across the road, there's a recognition, a small flinch as he understands what this sighting means to him. And then again, when the Doctor and the Master talk on the bridge and we see the silhouette of the Doctor desperately rub his face with his hands in frustrated anguish, as if trying to argue with the fate he knows he can't avoid. I don't think he wants to go. In the final episode, when he and the Master materialize in the control room of the Pharos project, and the Master tries to shrink yet another human being with his personal massage TCE, when the Doctor shoves the man out of the way, his headphones fall off and we hear heavy, mournful orchestral music. It's a funereal musical cue, another clue to the Doctor's inevitable end. The man that we have all known as the Doctor for so long is going. The teeth, the curls, the scarf, they will all be gone. And in its place, we'll have Peter Davison. Young, breathless, and covered in celery. So, how does Logopolis rank? Well, despite all its droning on about numbers and its incredibly dull aliens, for the tension that we see between the Doctor and the Master, for the stakes, for what this particular story represents to the show as a whole, Logopolis gets a solid 8 out of 10 from me. Now, I definitely want to make this a thing. So to finish off, just like with the last review, I'm going to leave you with 3 things from Logopolis that I'll be keeping in my very own personal TARDIS databanks. First, the Master saying, "Envy is the beginning of all true greatness." What a line! What a line! Second, one of my most favourite scenes ever of all Doctor Who, when Tegan realises that her Auntie Vanessa has been killed, and the Doctor puts an arm around her and says, "I'm so sorry, Tegan," before gently shoving her off into an opposite corner and ignoring her. "Soz about your aunt, now sod off over there. Cheers." Third, the Watcher. He's just so creepy. What is he? What does he look like that? What the hell is going on? Ooh, yeah, the Watcher. Bring back the Watcher. Wow, Logopolis, what a great full stop. What an amazing end. Yeah, I love it. I'll always watch Logopolis. Well, I think it only makes sense that the next review should be Castrovalva, the 5th Doctor's opening story, so a nice bit of post-Regeneration fun. Plus, it closes out what's thought of as the Master Trilogy that began with his return in The Keeper of Traken. After that, we'll take a bit more of a random approach to the stories we choose to look at. Feel free to make some suggestions about what those stories might be in the comments. Until then, I'm off to buy some celery.